I am a former Satanist saved by Jesus, and this is my story of how God saved me from a life of witchcraft and sin and death. When I was 14, I gave my life to the devil and began worshiping him. Now, why I did that is a very long story that's a topic for another video. Today I'm going to be talking about how God saved me. So when I was 14, I started worshiping the devil. I worshiped Satan. I was practicing witchcraft. I did a lot of things that I'm not proud of. I did things that I won't even say what I did because I don't want people to imagine the things that I did. And although I would like to note, I did not do anything illegal. All right, I would like to note that. But what I was doing would eventually wind me up in a bit of trouble. And I found myself in a situation in which it looked like a very dreary, a very hopeless situation. And at one point, I was being attacked by people. I guess that's the best way to put it. And it was very clear that I was going to die in this situation. And from what I have read, from what I understand, a lot of people who went through what I did go through, a lot of them have died. And it was a miracle that I did survive. And during this attack, I don't really have, I don't know the right words to describe it. So that's the best thing I can come up with. But during this attack, this situation, which it was very clear I was going to die, a being of white stood beside me. A being I believe was an angel. And I don't recall it said anything, but I knew I was going to be okay. And during this situation, I managed to be calm. You know, I wasn't panicking. I wasn't freaking out while staring death square in the face. I just knew I was going to be okay. And lo and behold, I got out of this situation alive. And the people who were attacking me were surprised by how calm I was and how well I held up. And whenever they finally did leave me alone, I heard them saying, "Wow, he didn't even pee his pants. He didn't even throw up." It's like, how on earth did he walk away from this like he did, you know, whenever they eventually decide to give up and stop bothering me? And you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, okay, well, you immediately got down on your knees and you thanked God. Nope, I continued to worship the devil because I wasn't out of the woods yet, you know, for that very specific event. I survived, thank God, but the dreary situation I was in, it was still, I had still gotten myself into quite a mess. All right. And about a month or so went by, and there was pretty much no hope of me getting out of this mess I had gotten myself wound up in. It was a very, I had a very long, dreary road ahead of me. And it was very clear to me that the evil one, the devil, had no indication, or he had no intentions of helping me. I believe he wanted to put me in the grave as quickly as possible to send me to hell. So I would die in my sin, so I would die as a Satanist. And after, you know, a month and a half after that brutal attack, it might have been 2 months, I don't remember, in which I miraculously survived. And again, it was very clear that this situation I'd gotten myself in, it wasn't going to be improving anytime soon. So I got down on my knees and I prayed to God for the first time in my life. I would say I truly prayed to God. Now, how had I prayed to God before I was a Satanist? I mean, yeah, but it was I never truly believed in God, if that makes sense. You know, it'd always been kind of just empty prayers, if that makes sense. And I would say this was the first time in my life in which I truly prayed. I got down on my knees and I said, Lord, if you were real, please get me out of this situation. And within 24 hours, the situation I was in, which looked like it was headed straight towards my death, towards a long life of sorrow and suffrage, it took a massive U-turn within 24 hours of me praying to God. And it was a miracle, really, how fast things started to get resolved. Like, you cannot tell me it was a miracle, right? I'm on this horrendous path, and then I pray to God, then all of a sudden, U-turn. It's just things are looking amazingly, amazingly up. Now, that being said, it would take some time before things got completely cleaned up, but like the vast bulk of the mess I had gotten myself in was cleaned up within 24 hours. All right? And you're probably saying to yourself, oh, okay, well, you then got your life back on track. Not exactly. There's a Bible verse, a dog returns to its vomit. Even after all these miracles, I even did very briefly go back to being a Satanist. And, my life again started to go downhill. But then I truly gave my life to God, I think. And now it would be years before I would say I really gave my life to God. Like I was 14, I was a Satanist. I almost died. I was in this bad situation. I prayed to God. Things got better overnight. I did kind of start to stumble off the path a little bit. I kind of got back on the path of following God. And I would say it wasn't until I was maybe 16 and a half or 17 in which I truly began to seek God, if that makes sense. And here I am years and years and years later. I've given my life to Christ. I love God. I love Jesus. Jesus is first in my life. And I feel God's been putting it on me to share my testimony. Do I wish I hadn't have done those things? Yeah. But I am thankful that I've overcome this and that I can share my testimony with someone else, and I hope this video helps someone. This is the first video I've ever done on this channel. I honestly doubt it'll do well, because that's kind of how the YouTube algorithm works. You put out your first video, it's probably not going to do too well. But I hope that this video, that my testimony could help someone, could touch someone, and I would like to hear your thoughts down in the comments. I do ask that you please be respectful, but, do you have anything you want to add to this? Or do you have a prayer request? Or are you struggling with something right now? Just let me know down in the comments. And always remember that Jesus loves you, and know that you are never too far gone to be saved. I'll probably be doing some follow-up videos on similar topics, but just know that you are never too far gone to be saved. God can use anyone. Think of Saul, and how he was persecuting the church, how he was murdering, men, women, I believe children as well, just because they followed Jesus. And God used him. God turned him around, or helped him turn around, and get his life back on track. And he wrote the majority of the books in the New Testament. God can use anyone. But that's all for me for today, y'all. Take it easy. God bless you. And peace.